session and very much worth your time today, so glad to have you with us. I'm Jane Conover. I'm the President and CEO of the York County Community Foundation. And our job is to carry on the legacies of York County and to care deeply about this community and want to make a difference beyond their lifetimes. And many of these legacies are attributed to the people in this room, and I'm very grateful for you to partner with us in that work. I'd also like to thank our co-sponsors today, York County State Planning Council and the League Legacy of York County. Both are programs of the York County Bar Foundation, and their partnership allows us to offer CEU credits today, so please make sure you go to the table and sign up if you haven't already. I want to also thank our dynamic staff who organized this event and many obstacles these days for organizing in-person events, and thank you for overcoming them. So that was Rabia Khan, Sarah Thomas, Mary Kay Brignansky. Thank you so much for getting us here today. The Community Foundation aims to be a resource to help you best meet the needs of your clients and the nonprofit community. One recent example of how we've done this is a 67-year-old private foundation decided to move their assets to create a donor-advised fund to the Community Foundation because they felt that it was going to be easier to administer, less burdensome on them. Also this past year, we closed a chapter in the Han Home nonprofit. You remember the Han Home for Women closed about 14 years ago after a fire, and the assets were transferred to the Community Foundation and created an endowed fund to benefit older adults in the community. Part of that agreement was that the Community Foundation had to maintain and sustain the nonprofit organization so that the women who were living in the Han Home had care throughout their lifetime. Well, last year, the final resident of the Han Home passed away, and all of the trusts got moved back into the Community Foundation. And while all that time, we were taking care of the residents, but in addition, we were making grants to the community, close to $2 million in grants that had made to the community to help older adults. And that endowment fund, of course, will be there to help future generations as well. The Community Foundation has dedicated time this year to reflect and refine our work. Our board of directors adopted a winning aspiration to fuel community transformation. We are refreshing our grant programs for greater impact. We're integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion into our work, and we're deepening our conversations with donors about transformational philanthropy. Our fund holders have used their generosity to transform the lives of people in York County for decades. 20 years ago, C. William Trout decided that he wanted to honor his father, who was a dentist in the Red Lion area. He created a Trout Fund at the Community Foundation so that children could receive free dental care. The fund has awarded over $270,000 to the Red Lion School District, and hundreds of children each year have their teeth cleaned and checked, thanks to this endowed fund. So let's meet the dental hygienist who is carrying out Dr. Trout's legacy.
Have you ever had a toothache? You can't sit without it hurting. You can't lay down without it hurting. These youngsters, when they're in pain, they cannot focus on their schoolwork. So the schoolwork falls by the wayside. Once you get a child out of pain, they can go back to their class, they can study, they get to learn. My name is Kathy Sanders. I am the school dental hygienist for Red Lion Area School District. So we have 500 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. 32 of them actually have dental programs implemented into their curriculum. So from kindergarten through 8th grade, I do dental lessons. And if I can arrange for the tooth fairy to work it into her schedule, she will come in and sit with the children during their lunch, talk to them, answer any of their questions, and then provide a toothbrush, flossers, and an activity book. These children get to see the benefit of having a beautiful smile, taking care of their teeth. If you start little brushing and flossing, that stays with you through your life. Another part of my job is I get to screen children. I'm just looking and checking to see if all the teeth are in good shape or if there's any decay or missing teeth. And we're very lucky because as a result of funding from the C. William Trout Fund, I have all the equipment that you can imagine fit in the back of your car, going from one school to another, setting up a small dental clinic. Most school districts don't do that. we get to do cleanings on these teeth. So it's like them going to the dental office. So if we have a youngster that is underinsured or no insurance, and I check them and yes, they need dental care, I will contact the dentist and see if they will take this child on and take them from whatever they have in their mouth now to health. I'm just very proud of what we're able to do for these youngsters. Dr. Trout impacted many people in his family practice. And he is still impacting many, many people. Every year we see hundreds of students that would not have had care otherwise. So his legacy will live on for many, many years, benefiting a great deal of people.
We're really honored today to recognize another visionary in our community, and that's Reid Anderson, with his induction into the Community Foundation's Professional Advisor Society. This recognition society honors professionals who demonstrate their commitment to advancing philanthropy and encouraging endowed charitable giving. Our community suffered a great loss when Reid passed away this past March. An attorney at Stockton Leader, Reid joined the firm in 1970. Throughout his 51 years at the firm, his strong devotion and service to his clients persisted as he provided counsel in real estate, zoning and land development, estate planning and administration, and general civil law. In addition to his law practice, Reid gave countless hours of service to his community. The Community Foundation was lucky to have Reid on the board of directors from 1997 to 2005. He also served on the Strategic Planning Committee of the Foundation in 2006, and he co-chaired Your Counts. One of the greatest legacies Reid left was the Schema to History program. Drawing on the mutual love of railroads, Reid and his dear friends Bill Simpson shared a vision for creating a destination attraction in York County. Now known as the Northern Central Railway of York, this rail excursion is one of York County's largest tourist attractions. As a professional advisor and former board member, Reid understood the importance of having an endowed fund. The Schema to History made its first trip in 2013, and by 2017, it had an endowed fund at the Community Foundation, which will help sustain its operations. Reid was a kind and generous person, and we were really honored to know him. Thankfully, his legacy will also live on in his children and grandchildren. So today, to accept the award on behalf of Reid is his daughter, Reid Anderson, also an attorney at Stockton Leader and also a member of the Community Foundation's Professional Advisor Recognition Society. Jody, do you mind? Connie? Well, come on up. We're so happy to have Connie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Kay Gronowski, and I'm the new Vice President of Development for the Community Foundation. And I keep saying new, although I've been here almost 2 years, because this is maybe the second time I've been in person with you all, having started just before COVID. So although I feel like we're Zoom friends, it's good to see you all in person. So thank you for coming. And thank you to Jody and Connie for coming and allowing us to honor Reid and all he's done for both the Community Foundation and the York community. We really appreciate it, and thank you very much for that. So when we were talking about our professional advisor seminar, we wanted to have someone who was able to speak to what's actually happening in charitable giving and through endowments. And we know that the one thing that we can count on this year is that things will change. So I saw that Bryan had a specific talk that he does about current trends in giving. So we wanted to have Bryan come today to share with you what those trends are. Just to give you a little bit of introduction, Bryan is the founder and president of Charitable Solutions, LLC. He specializes in non-cash asset receipt and liquidation, gift annuity reinsurance brokerage, actuarial gift annuity risk management consulting, emergency assistance funds, as well as currency and life insurance appraisal audits. He also serves as senior partner of Ekstrom, Clontz and Associates, a community foundation consulting firm in Tucson, Arizona. Bryan is the founder of Tacoma Foundation, Inc. and the Tacoma Asset Trust, two national donor-advised funds focusing on non-cash assets generally, and S-Corp transactions respectively. These foundations have raised over $1.5 billion in non-cash assets. He is also the founder of the Emergency Assistance Foundation, Inc., a global charity allowing over 300 employers to create emergency assistance and disaster relief funds for their more than 10 million employees. Finally, he created the National Gift Annuity Foundation, which is the largest national independent gift annuity platform. Bryan has given more than 2,000 presentations on charitable gift planning and community foundation topics, has been published in an international insurance textbook and a book of charitable gifts of non-cash assets, and has written more than 24 articles in financial services and plan-giving journals. Bryan has been quoted by the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Kiplinger's Personal Finance, Bloomberg Wealth, and serves as a contributor on charitable tax issues for Forbes. Believe it or not, that's a brief summary of Bryan's CV, so you can see more at his website on Charitable Solutions. Please join me in welcoming Bryan Clontz.
Perfect timing, whoever did that, very good. Well, I'm glad to be here. So I think I was here, I can't remember the last time, I think it was at least 7, 8 years ago. So it's been a long time, so I'm glad to be back. A couple things that none here is going to go through all that. My mom cares about that, nobody else does, that's usually true. The second thing is, and this is 100% true, I should tell you this, but I don't care. Usually if somebody does like the full bio, I have to give them like the other side of the coin. And so the other side of the coin is like a lot of the speaking is, as she mentioned, and probably 7, 8 years ago, around the time I was here last time, I was gone all week, so I sort of did like city to city, came back. My wife now, like 27 years, so we've been married a while then. What would be an appropriate thing to say to your spouse? Been gone all week long, all week. They walk in the door. What would be an appropriate first sentence to say to your spouse? So throw it out, just the interactive portion. Take out the trash is not the correct answer. Okay? So, I've heard, bring me a beer. If you want a beer, you like to be maybe 50-50. So, what would we want? It's good to see you. Something I missed you, that would be very appropriate. I swear to God. She said, and I quote, "Please God tell me to wear that tie with that shirt." 100% true. And I said, because I'm oblivious anyway, I'm like, no, I pulled over on the way back at midnight from the airport and like switch it up. It's the best of like, I don't care, shirt, tie, whatever. Completely true. From that point on, when I would go speak anywhere, I'd open up my suitcase and there would be a tie safety pin to the appropriate shirt, because this is also true. She used to use a little sticky note, put the sticky note on the tie, the sticky note, and pack your bag, sticky note gets all messed up. So I screwed up again coming home. She's like, oh, I have to fix this another way. So then the safety thing. If you want to feel completely demasculated as you open up to listen to your bio like that, and you can't be trusted to dress yourself in your own household, that's a little bit more of the reality of my background. So I digress a little bit. Wasn't going to tell you that story. I was also expelled from high school. I had to repeat my sophomore year, but that's another story. Okay. So I am an oblivious male. I've already sort of said that. I will plead fully guilty, but I do try to make observations wherever I am, and sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not as easy. So yesterday, I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and so yesterday I did speeches about half a day in Orlando. And in Orlando, the hotel was the host hotel, I want you to visualize this, for the Mrs. Olympia competition. You want to feel like an unbelievably weak person, you get on an elevator at 11 at night with the Mrs. Olympia chant. This is not like your local, arm wrestling. This is, you're not messing around. So I think 97% of the women in that hotel would beat me up badly. I mean, like badly. And so that was peculiar. So we did that. So then I land here at about 12:30 last night in Harrisburg, whatever. So I get in, and the first thing I see in the elevator here, I think this is funny. It says new, under this, evidently it's under new management. They're probably in here, they're gonna be passive aggressive or something. And so there's a little panel in there. And the very first thing that they highlight is a new trampoline park. Which means, I guess there was an old trampoline park, which is to me peculiar. But the fact that they would lead with that, of all the things that they did, it's like, we're going to trampoline park, because that's evidently in York. You guys like to jump up and down and stuff. I have no idea. I've been to every state except for one in this guy. I've never seen that anywhere, so that must be a York thing. So that's all I know. I like to jump up and down and stuff. So can't make that up. So that's not why you're here. So we're going to talk about top 10 trends. You can see here too, that at least I think every charitable advisor should know. I will digress a bit. I love interaction, super informal. So any questions you have, I always say too, sometimes I'm an amateur mind reader, and I know what everybody in this room is thinking, and you're thinking, this guy's bad, it's going to be like the longest 1 hour of my life. And I'm thinking the same thing about you. So we're going to see how this goes. So any questions you have, push back, yell, throw stuff up. I am a one-trick pony. I mentioned to the table up here, I get very excited when people ask me to do my one little trick. Only charitable planning stuff. That's all I do. So don't get me outside there with questions, just those questions. All good? Amen or something? All okay? All right, here we go. So first one is, you'll know right where we are on the presentation because there are 10 trends. We'll start with trend number 1. And so a couple of these I'm going to gloss through a little bit. I'm going to talk about some, we're timely trends, I think, but a couple of them I think are still important as advisors to understand sort of what's happening in the marketplace. So the first trend you see there is philanthropy is alive and well, kind of no matter what. We as a culture are freakishly generous. And I say that to advisors and they all nod, oh yeah, we know Americans give more. We're kind of like the UK. We're kind of like Canada. We're kind of like Australia. No, we are not. We give double per capita what the number 2, number 3, and number 4 countries give. Have we not seen that with COVID? I mentioned when we were talking earlier, how many really good excuses were there last year not to give? A lot. They don't have to make stuff up last year. Giving went up more last year than in any year in the past probably 25 or 30 years. People respond. It's weird and irrational, frankly. And thank God for it, right? It's unbelievable. As you can see here too, people see need now, when they see now they give. The previous peak giving year was 2007, it troughed in 2008, early 2009 with the Great Recession. Even then you'll see their giving went down about 5 to 6% of the biggest record giving year in the history of our country. And when I used to say that to advisors back then, they'd say, no, my clients are eating cat food out in the woods and they're living under bridges, so like 95 cents on the dollar was coming in at the low point but the high point. People saw me, they gave. Even when they were not in a situation for many cases. In a very comfortable situation, if they still respond. The other quote there, a person I respect a lot, which I like things that simplify and summarize. And she said, Bryan, the only competitor to philanthropy is conspicuous consumption. That's it. Are you okay? Have that. Kids okay? Have that. What does that mean? I have a little slide on that. And then to the extent that you are blessed enough to have any excess during life or through your estate, it's how do you allocate that? Do you buy more cars? Do you take bigger trips? I don't know what you do with it. But those are the decisions that people make in terms of the allocation around their gift. Now, I'll also say too, many donors give to what I call the big sexy things. What are those? Kids, pets, schools, churches, the big 4. So if you ever want to counsel, if you guys are advisors, which I'm assuming you are, counsel your nonprofit clients, or if you're on boards and they're going to do a special event, which I hate special events, by the way. We won't go down that whole track. But if you're going to do a special special event. What do you want to do? You want to get the little girl riding the mini pony through the church school. If you can design your special event where that little girl, you just take her on there, she's like jockeying through there. All the people like to get the kids, oh, here's the red bucket for kids, well, pets, jam the horse in there. So you get all this stuff right there, and then all the cash follows. So this is all very technical, as you can see. But you raise a ton of money, it's got school churches, you just mush all four together and you raise a special event. All right, that's what I would do. The other thing here too, which I find interesting, we've got this tax sort of specter hanging over us, as we sort of all know. And I'm going to say this to you, and I'm always saying it to myself, but I have to say it probably 50 times for you to sort of fully appreciate this. I don't mean that in a pejorative way at all, because I've had to say it like 1,000 times to myself. Taxes don't matter. They just do not matter. I'm a tax guy. I get so excited about tax stuff. At the margin it matters, at certain areas it matters. When you mush it, it doesn't matter. How do I know that? So I did a study going back to 1956, that's a long time ago, 1956, and I looked at overall charitable giving as a percentage of GDP. So all charitable giving in the country, what's GDP, what's the percentage? So I pushed that forward. This next slide, I only had so much room, I can't get all, whatever it is, 70 years almost. So I started in 1971. So you can see here, this is the percentage. Does it have a little pointer? It does, it does. So it has a percentage. This is the 2.1% of GDP was charitable giving in 1971. Anybody know what this little red line is that has 70% on it? The top tax. The top tax bracket. Ooh, baby. 70%. Highest marginal tax bracket. That's fun. Was that just for a year? Oh, no, that was for a long time, right? Called the Reagan Tax Act. 70%. Two schools of economic thought. One says, with giving, taxes that high, there's a hyper subsidy. Because if you give $1 and you deduct $1 at 70%, it's only costing you 30 cents to make the gift. That's a hyper subsidy. Giving should go through the roof. The other school of economic thought said, no, 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 taxes are so high that it will crowd out all discretionary giving because they're not going to feel very wealthy because they're paying so much in taxes they're not going to give. And I guarantee you this, if you had two of those economists speak for 10 minutes each, all of you, 100%, all of you at the end of each one of their speeches would say, well, that kind of makes sense, right? I don't know, it's kind of makes sense. So let's test it. This is not theoretical, let's just test it. You then go up 70%, bounces between 1.7 and 2% every single year. Reagan Tax Act, let's jump forward, 1986, the big one, right? 86 to 93 almost. 20 to 30% was the highest marginal tax bracket, 1.7 to 1.9%. If you go back all the way to 1956, it's 1.8 to 2.2% and increasing. Wars, recessions, stagflation, super low state exemption. When I started this business, like when you do $600,000 per person was the exemption, huge exemption, no, complete repeal for the year. Now it's coming. Every time that happens, giving's going to happen. This is going to whip giving 1.8 to 2.2% every single year. 90% of people, as you all know, don't even itemize. Their giving should be what it is, and it's the same as it was before. I think that's a wonderful story to tell. And for advisors, including me, good reminder, people see need, they're going to respond to the need. If you can help them with the taxes, they can give more. That's the frosting, that's the gravy. But they're not giving to save taxes, because you can never save more than 100% of what you're giving anyway. You all know that. But it's just, I think, important in this time period to realize lots of noise, lots of research from different groups that will say it's going off a cliff, it's going to do this. It's just weirdly static at 2% every single year, which is double other country giving in our peer group, UK, Canada, Australia. So I think that's important in this period to sort of cut through the noise a little bit. Second thing, demographic trends, your best friend or worst enemy. So I live in Florida, and so I can tell you, number one bullet point is true. So 85 and over is the fastest growing demographic in the country. So super super long-lived. They're all driving. They continue to drive. It's not a good thing, but they're driving. Everywhere. Women are controlling, so don't give me an amen here. Let's slow down. You know that t-shirt that says, let's eat, comma, grandma, and in the back of the shirt said, let's eat grandma with no comma, and it says, punctuation saves lives, like they're going to eat grandma. My daughter loves that. So this is the same thing. I got to figure out the punctuation here. I'm going to be in big trouble. So women are controlling, or will control, I'm holding this up hopefully, an unprecedented level of wealth. So I'm an actuary by background, at least academically. By the way, you know the difference, I'm sure you've heard this joke, between the extroverted actuary and the introverted actuary, how you can tell the difference. So the extroverted actuary will look at your shoes when he talks to you. So, could you use that for some CPAs? Not in this room, I'm sure. Engineers, you can swap that out. Pretty good joke, you can sort of maneuver that in. But the point is 100% true. In actuarial science, you got to do what's called life contingencies. Not a joke. Through calculus 3, that's a fun level of calculus, by the way, to determine that women kill us all. 72 to 74% of the time, surviving spouse is a female. And so the point here is that the giving patterns for women are very, very different than men. Very different. Men love to restrict. I don't know why, it's like in our DNA. We restrict everything. During life, restrict. Death, restrict. Lots of restrictions. Women's giving patterns much more discretionary. So like for your York County Community Foundation, an unrestricted fund or a field of interest fund, very, very often funded by women, usually through estates. Very different giving patterns. We then look at the generational stuff. I'm going to spend a lot of time here for the community foundation. This way doesn't fit that much anyway, but for broader-based charities, think about the Depression era. And by the way, is this not something that's difficult to process in your head? How much time do we have left with the Depression era to where they are no longer with us? It's about 4 to 7 years. That's it. There will be no one left from the Depression era. Is that not weird to think about? A whole generation, your whole life has been with you and what they have accomplished and everything else. That's it. That's sort of, I hate to tell you this, like I'm an actuary. There's a 100% mortality rate in this country. I don't know about other countries, but when they pass away, that's it for the Depression era. But think about Depression era. My grandfather, he went to Rotary, spent all his time at Rotary, gave to United Way, they did distributions, he had friends on the allocation committee, it was an unrestricted gift. I'm sure, I trust, that what they do will be for the benefit of the community. All sounds good, right? Big blue chip charities, Red Cross, Cancer Society, that's a very comfortable sort of zone for them. You then go down to the millennials, that is anathema to them. Large, traditional, bureaucratic charities. What my niece just did, she's a little wacko on a couple levels, but what my niece just did is she went with her sorority. They flew down to Haiti. They were going to do, I say, more of a spring breaky thing last year, even though it was last year, 2 years ago, before COVID. So 2 years ago, went down, realized that there was a place that needed to have a well. Within 24 hours, she put a bunch of pictures on Instagram, linked it back to a GoFundMe campaign, had half the sorority agreed to do the volunteering, raised the money, built about 3/4 of the well. It wasn't as good as they thought it was. Did 3/4 of the well, took a bunch more pictures, sent that out on Facebook, and then flew home. That's different. It is not possible, I can say it 3 times, to understand how freaked out, that's technical, the large blue chip charities are with what I just described. Because they have a big foot on the generational Depression era lily pad, and they're fishing for what the next lily pad is, and they're having trouble finding what that next transition will be. Freaked out. Does that all make sense? Think about it in the financial services world. 25, 30 years ago, you had discretionary accounts. That was quite common, right? I trust my financial advisor. I'm signing over discretionary authority. He or she can make trades whenever they want. I'm sure it'll be in my best interest. Is that happening now? Not so much. Well, why would you do that? I want a self-directed IRA that I can go on at 3 a.m. and do 14 trades based on the information that I get. That's exactly what's happening with charities as well. But a lot of these models are still in that metaphor or analogy, the discretionary portfolio model, and everybody's moving very quickly away from them, and they're not sure where to go. It'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. I have no idea how that's going to play out. We'll see. Competition is everywhere. Oh my God. So there were about 1.3 million charities. Many of you might know the IRS did a huge purge of charities about 10 years ago. That purge basically said if you haven't filed your 990 tax return in 3 years, you are no longer a charity. People say, oh, okay, there'll be tons of charities that will be purged off, and they're over. So it's about 1.3 million charities, about 400,000 of them roughly purged off, no longer tax-exempt organizations, because those were dormant shelf charities. That's come back plus some since then. You can see there 30 to 50,000 new charities are created every single year. That's 125 to 150 new charities every day, including weekends and holidays. Yay! And there's no redundancy at all, which is amazing to me. That's a joke. What I would encourage you to do, you won't do it, but I'll say it anyway, is if you have any client that comes in to say, I'm thinking about starting my own charity, just sit them down, give them a cup of coffee, and say, let's go on Google for 10 minutes. I'm being very serious. I'd like to teach kids to be able to read. I think literacy is very important, and I'm thinking about a literacy program. That sounds great. I'm going to type in York literacy program into Google, and I'm going to hit enter. And I bet a couple things will come, or I'll talk with my partners at the Community Foundation to say, who's doing what around this area that they do. Rather than setting up your own literacy program, I'm making this up. We got a great Boys and Girls Club, so this could be an after program, and you can provide funding to them, and you can come in and you can arrange volunteers that fits with their mission. You see where I'm going. But I do not tell you how many of these 125 or 150 a day. If two spend 10 minutes on Google before they file their 1023 application, I'll be surprised. I think I'd like to do this Tuesday after school for literacy. But did you know Tammy does one Thursday after school? You can't learn how to read on a Thursday. That's wacky talk. I want to create my own charity. And that's what they do. Which creates what? Another board. Another back office. Another 990. And we now have 1.3, it's probably 1.35 million of them. So lots of activity. Community foundations, I'll sort of go through this quickly. Community foundations are one of the fastest growing sectors of philanthropy. You should be very proud of your community foundation here. 180 billion in assets plus, depends on the day you're in the market, over 600 funds. And so I've had a great pleasure sort of knowing the foundation sort of over time continues to grow very, very nicely. And in particular in the endowed area, but also unrestricted field of interest, discretionary area in a huge way. There are about 850 community foundations like yours nationally. I find this interesting. There are about 1,100 that are international. So what started in 1914 in a banker's head, they're going, basically, I didn't read all this, but I know what I was thinking. We, as a banker, manage these perpetual trusts, charitable trusts, and we have all these charities coming to us asking for money. We don't have to give money to, we manage the money. And why don't we create this charity, and we'll sort of move the assets over there to then be able to have local people in the community that have expertise about what the needs are, and to be able to get those grants. It makes perfect sense. 1,100 now international. There are more international community foundations than domestic. So when I was in China, there's one in China. There are about 42 in Italy. Huge number of the former Russian republics. So one in Singapore. So this idea that you have here is now been sort of exported globally. Very, very key point. So I was basically the Mary Kay in Atlanta for a while. And many advisors were shocked to hear this. So I was in charge of development as she is. And 90% of all of our new donors came to us as referrals from their professional advisors. 90%. We did nothing else. No other marketing, no other development. The other 10% came to us as referrals from existing donors who had originally come to us from their professional advisors. So the fact that you're growing so quickly immediately lets me know the relationship that you have with your advisors and the trust that you have for the Community Foundation as a charitable solution during life or at death, when they're planning something or selling something. That's basically what it is, and they want to maximize their charitable impact. So just a couple quick points there. Last thing, last bullet point 2 is development plans. So sort of outside community foundations, you hear about all of these huge billion-dollar campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. So it used to be that these large campaigns, in particular universities, they would raise 80% of these big campaigns from 20% of their donors. You can see where I'm going. And then it went 90-10. One group came out about 3 years ago and said they raised 90% of their campaign from 6% of their donors. And I did this talk again pre-COVID, and they came up a big group. It was a Big 10 university, I'll just say that much. 4% of their donors. And so a lot of times I'll talk with advisors, they'll say, it feels that my clients, especially my bigger ones, are getting hit up a lot more. They are. If you want to see like a war room in a campaign, they know more about these donors than the donors know about themselves. It is spooky, the amount of research that they have and wealth profiling. Even to the extent a Midwestern University major gift officer told me one time, she said, we are not allowed to go out of our office and do a personal visit unless we think that we can complete a $250,000 gift, because we have thousands of those prospects that we've been able to determine through all of our wealth profiling. And so there's no reason cost effectively to do that. How weird is that? The question, of course, is, does this raise money quickly? Oh yeah, easier to get a $10 million gift for one person than a whole lot of smaller ones to amount to that, as you know. The question, of course, is, if the jury is out, what happens on the next campaign? Because now you're only engaging 4% or even 10% of your constituency, and what I'm hearing over and over and over is, we'll let the next president worry about the next campaign. We need to build the building now. And so if you want to talk about an efficient ROI way of doing it, you get the biggest checks possible, as fast as possible, from as few people as possible. So it's very efficient to do it that way, but who knows what the next sort of leg will be. So I don't know. Any questions so far? Let's wrap through a third of this, but all okay? Okay. Yes?
You had on screen fall in the United States.
Yes. A little bit strong to say fall, but it's a generational issue. And so they pitched that horse to large workplace campaigns. My very first job was at United. And so the weird thing is, not weird, they play such an important role in all communities. And if they were to go away tomorrow, we have to recreate them as something very, very powerful. But when you're hooking back to the efficiency, when you hook your wagon to a large workplace campaign, generally speaking, you need 500 plus employees to be effective doing an employee campaign, and you need no competition. What they have is complete, especially with COVID, there aren't giant factories like there were, and so what's happening is you're diffusing all of these sort of very large company to workplace campaign, number one, and number two, on top of that, you have massive competition into workplace. And you have younger donors saying, that's what my grandfather gave to, I want to do something very different. And so it's a confluence of negative, it's almost like the perfect storm in a bad way for many United ways. I was on the phone with their national office yesterday working on things, so I said they're fantastic, working with them all the time. Their current president, Bryan Clontz, and I know worldwide, actually hired me for my first job in Atlanta, so all that is weird. But the point is, if you look at aggregate campaigns haven't even kept pace with inflation for about 30 years. Where you got community foundations growing at about an 8 to 10% clip every single year. Issue-based charities growing very, very quickly. So it's not that in any way it's bad, it's fantastic. It's just a model that was built to do a certain thing really, really, really well. Depression era, large workplaces. And if you lose discretionary in large workplaces, now you're sort of fishing for where's our lily pad. That's precisely the issue generation. And from a workplace standpoint, yeah, everybody's independent contractor. What's your nice good? I don't know what to do with that. How do you raise money efficiently through payroll deduction with a whole bunch of independent contractors? I don't know. But that's a real struggle. Any questions on that or thoughts? We get a lot of competition. All right, so a couple things here. Next 2 slides, I hope are big nuggets. Forget charitable stuff. For you as adults and for you as advisors, it sounds very sort of patriarchal, but I think you'll get it here in a second. So I was just speaking, as I mentioned yesterday, actually with this professor in Orlando. And so this is really, he's the Michael Jordan in our space. Dr. Russell James, you may have had him up here or seen stuff, but anyway. So he did this experiment. So it's at Texas Tech, and did this experiment. And so he had 2 focus groups, and you'll sort of see already what it is. And so talking about simplifying language and using non-tech jargon. And we all say, oh no, our language is simple. Make it simpler. It's the result of this experiment. So you can see there, he asked the first group, big group, he said, how many of you can see there would like to make a gift to charity in your will? This is aspirational. This is focus groupy. So everybody's like, oh, that's what I think I'm supposed to say. But you get the point. 23% of those people said, I'd be interested in doing that now. Okay? How many would like to make a gift to charity in your will? 23%, I'm interested in doing that now. Then ask, how many would like to make a bequest gift to charity? 12% were interested. I hope that everybody in this room is thinking the same thing that I am. It's like, that doesn't make any sense at all. It means the same thing. It means the same thing to you, but to normal humans, it does not mean the same thing. Bequest, I don't know how to spell that. God forbid you say bequeath, you could add like 7 more vowels in there. That sounds like what really rich people do. That sounds like a medieval estate plan. I don't know what bequest and bequeathing, but a gift of your will, oh, I know what that means. Yes, I'd like to do that. It means the same thing, but by changing one word that means the same thing, twice as many people are interested in doing that thing. If that doesn't freak you out, you're not paying attention. Simplify your language. The next slide is even better because it wasn't a focus group. In the UK, you can actually call whatever their version of a 1-800 number is and have your will done on the phone. So they'll just ask you a bunch of questions. I guess type it in, take a credit card. I have no idea. Actually doing their wills. Okay? So this group heard about Dr. James' study. They actually did their study a year prior. But they said, we're seeing this really interesting thing around this one word, or is focusing on this one word. Let's test it. So the first people who called 1,000, not like 7, 1,000 people that called in to have their wills done in the UK. This is not aspirational. They're doing their wills. The first group, there was no reference to charity at all. 5% of those people said, you never brought up charity. I'd like to include something in my will for charity. I said, sure, put it in. The next group you see, they didn't say bequest. Bequest, okay, it's like kryptonite. It'll kill it. Do not say bequest. They then asked one sentence as part of their fact finder. Would you like to leave any money to charity in your will? By asking one question, 10% of the people said yes. Some of you might be students of what's called behavioral economics and behavioral finance and social norming and all this kind of stuff. All this means is, this is true, we have this reptilian piece of our brain, this is all true, and we think we're going to get eaten by something. All true. I don't know what that thing is, but we're all worried about getting eaten. So we're going to be part of a herd, social norming. So they can manipulate. What I always say too is, humans are unbelievably manipulable and we're unbelievably lazy. And you might say, I'm not. We are like puppets on a string. We are so manipulable. So here's how you can manipulate a whole herd by creating a fantasy herd. This all sounds weird. They asked the question. Many of our customers, they don't even call them clients in the UK. Many of our customers like to leave money to charity in their will. What did they just do? They created the herd. It's so savory, so safe in the herd, so warm and cozy. If you want to be out of the herd, get eaten, that's your call. But if you want to be safe and cozy in the herd, many of us are doing this thing. Are there any charities or causes that you are passionate about? They did a social norming, twisted it in will, and then had you answer the question, are there causes or charities that you're passionate about? Does all that make sense? By asking this one question, it's got a period in there. I make it one sentence as a run-on, but just one sentence question differently. 15% of the people included charity in their will. It gets weird. They then went back and looked at the average amount donated to charity for the first two groups, and they were identical. This group of 1,000 callers, again, not a small number, it's significant, left over double to charities in this group than the first two groups. Is that not the weirdest thing ever? So as advisors, I say with love, I don't care what you do in New York, I'm flying away, I may or may not see it 6 to 8 years again, whatever. I love you guys, so don't do whatever you want. But if you're advisors, you're like, what is the question that we can comfortably ask our clients as part of our financial planning, as part of our accounting, as part of our estate planning practice, including that in our back finder? That's the question. Don't make it up. This is academically tested. You have to change some words? Yes. Don't say customers, say clients. Done. That's your question. That's it. It's kind of like McDonald's. If you have a McDonald's franchise, and I hear sometimes people say, well, up in New York, we like to have a little bit more rare than the rest of the country. They're going to go, you cook the hamburger for 42 seconds and then you flip the stupid hamburger. That's your question. Don't mess with it. Everybody okay? I say all this with love. I hope you're taking it with love. But that's what you do. When I talk about legacy, super quick aside, and it's weird, it has nothing to do with charity. Many of you know that the Department of Labor has been trying to increase participation in employer-sponsored retirement plans. And all these academic articles and pro-social behavior, all the. Do you know the thing, I think it was like 3 years ago, the Department of Labor said, you know what, we're going to go to an opt-out model versus an opt-in model. That's all they did. You know why they did that? This is the weirdest thing ever. The seminal academic journal article that finally tipped them over the point to go to an opt-out versus opt-in, this is the weirdest thing, came from Scandinavia around organ donations. This is not a joke. So in Scandinavia, I don't know which were the two of the three countries, I don't care. Two of the countries had between 92 and 95% organ donation rates. And the other country had like 4 or 5%. And this befuddled researchers. They're like, what is going on? Is it cultural? Is it religion? Do the other two countries have like the best public service announcement billboards ever? I say, no. Do you know what it was? This is so funny. I don't know why I think this is so funny. When you go to get your driver's license, and you're doing it, I don't have no idea what they do, but you probably go to the computer screen, right? And they say, oh, is this your name? Type in your name, address or something. And I'm sure what happens is, and this is true, that you sort of hit next. And on the next page, it would say, would you like to be an organ donor? And this is where it gets crazy. In the two countries, you already know, that have the highest organ donation, it's checked yes. In the other country, it's not checked. I am convinced that there are people that go into the country that have the 4 or 5% organ rate that probably say, for me, I think it would be great to leave my organs as sort of an ultimate gift, help somebody have a better life and so forth. But man, the effort I would have to take to make that. Think about practically what you have to do. You'd have to grab the mouse. You're not finished. You're like, oh, we're finished. No. You have to move the mouse. You have to get it all lined up with that little yes box. And you have to click yes. I don't have the time of my day to accomplish all that. Next. Versus the countries
that it's automatically checked. Yes, I'm convinced that 94% of their population doesn't want to give their organs, but man, to opt out of that, think of the time that would take. You think this is a joke? That's why the Department of Labor said, we'll just auto-enroll them into their 401k. If they're not opting out of organ harvesting, they're not going to opt out of their 401k. That's not a joke. It's not like, what color do you want your balloons for your birthday? This is, can you come in and take my organs? This would be, I would think, a higher level question. Then you're like, sounds good. Yes? Okay, next. I mean, this is how lazy we are as a species. So that's my proof right there. Oh my gosh. Anyway. And now the other country now has, I think it's already 75% because they went to an opt-in, opt-out as well. So anyway, more than you want to know. Giving pledge. And so we've heard about this giving pledge, that way. Building their own. Giving pledge is that it's only happening when they're walking away. This is really happening today. That's a gateway of it's building their next they're 180 or so. And so they might not be leaving more than half of their wealth, but it's still a significant portion. And you can see there Warren Buffett's quote, which you've all heard 1,000 times, I'm sure. You should leave your kids so much that they can do anything, but not so much that they can do nothing. You say that to a millionaire next door, that resonates. T. Boone Pickens, who we lost a couple years ago, would always say, I never want to put my child in a situation where he or she doesn't have the pleasure of bringing home a paycheck. That resonates. Now let's go back to Warren Buffett for half a second. It's weird to me that it's not weird, say that 5 times fast, that we know what his estate plan. For 20 years, we've known his estate plan, 98% charity, 2% kids. Is that not kind of weird? It's like we know exactly what he's going to do. And all these other people come up with, this is what we're going to do. So it's all in this sort of the public sphere. Now, can anybody do the calculation of what 2%, he's only given to do 2% on a nominal basis? What's 2% of $120 billion? It's a lot. So the whole, give your kids so much they can do anything, not so much they can do nothing. I could make do with a $2.4 billion inheritance, and I may be able to do nothing. I could tighten up the budget and make that work. But 98% to charity. So also I find interesting, super quick story. I was in Los Angeles. It was in Beverly Hills. Last time I've ever been in Beverly Hills. Probably don't ever want to go back. And there was listen to this, a child psychologist of high net worth Beverly Hills families. Just chew on that for a minute. I told my wife, I said, if I'm ever convicted of murder, that should be my sentence, is to deal with high net worth Beverly Hills dysfunctional families. Can you imagine? That's all day long, that's what you're doing? I digress. So she did this talk, she said, any questions? And I said, I'm a financial planner sort of background, I get all these journals like you do, and every single estate planning, tax planning, financial planning journal will have some article in there every single time about, in essence, directly or indirectly saying, if you leave your kids too much money, you're going to ruin your kids. It's like every single one. I said, what has been your experience? I will never forget what she said, freaked me out. She said, you tell me how an 8 to a 10-year-old, she said, that is your window, 8 to 10. If you tell me how that 8 to 10-year-old who receives, let's make up a $10 inheritance allowance on Friday, you give me a little forensic accounting of that $10 on Sunday, she said, I will tell you precisely how that 8-year-old will spend a $2.1 million inheritance at 58 years old. She said, I will not be off. That'll freak you out. She said, it's usually the daughter gets the $10, she suffers the mom to take her to the store to get lemons and sugar, does a lemonade stand, she's got $37 on Sunday. Or the brother, there's always the brother. Gets the $10, already has 8 IOUs to the sister already, has no money by Sunday. She said what shocks her is that the family is shocked that brother, in my hypothetical, gets the $2.1 million, it's all gone in 36 months, and they're like, didn't see that coming. She's like, really? You didn't see that coming at all for the last 58 years. Her point was, the scary part, she said, financial character is baked between 8 and 10. Baked. She said, it is not changing, and more money added into it just personifies that character. She said, the only thing that can
change that is that there's almost literally a financial PTSD situation after 10. Kid, maybe parents have bankruptcy issue or foreclosure, lose their jobs. It's almost like the PTSD that the entire Depression era had going through the Depression. It reboots the brain. But she said if there's not that sort of level of trauma, after 10, it is BBs off of battleship after that point, which I find very interesting. So they say, oh, well, wait until after high school to train them about money. Oh, college. It is done. So that doesn't freak you out, you're not paying attention to, because at that point I had an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I'm calling going to the LAX airport, which is the worst airport on earth, by the way. And I'm calling my wife, and it's Eastern time, it's super late, like, get all the baby bags, it's the best thing. So, freak me out. So we talked about Millionaires Next Door. Many of you read that book, I hope, Millionaires Next Door. If you haven't, you should. What's the #1 car driven by a millionaire? Anybody remember? What was that? But it's close. Ford pickup. Ford pickup, #1 car driven by a millionaire, F-150. 2, you might find this interesting, when there were estate tax returns being filed, 706s, it would have on there the profession of the decedent. And so for those by number, not by percentage, does anybody know the #1 profession that actually completed an estate tax return, so an estate obviously large enough to file that return, by number, again, not by percentage. Any guesses there? It's teacher. Teacher's #1. It's like, how can that be? Traditionally female, traditionally full employment, learned to live well beneath her means, not a lot of conspicuous consumption usually going on, not going to drive a BMW of any series on any campus ever usually. Traditionally married to the professional or real estate entrepreneur sort of wealth person. 72 to 74% of the time he will pass away first, does the I love you will over to her, and now she has an estate tax problem. That's how that plays out. Well, that makes sense. The average amount left through will, I didn't say bequest, I'm trying to train myself, through will, is $65,000 as a charitable gift. Average amount, $65,000. Anybody know the average annual gift made to that same charity during life before leaving that $65,000? Average annual contribution prior to leaving the estate gift. It's $110 a year, which is less than $10 a month. So if you are anywhere in New York, or maybe, I guess it's what you guys are going to do at lunch, go out to the new trampoline park here. I mean, that's what you're going to do. And you see a teacher sitting in an F-150. And she's been giving her favorite charity $110 a year. She's got to stop somewhere, right? So for gas or stoplight, stop sign. You just grab onto her bottom. You hold on tight. This is all very important consulting. You should be jotting this down. Who's writing this down? You hold on tight, and she'll drag you. Drag. And when you get to her house, if you look out, you see like in the recycle bin, there are a whole lot of kitty litter bags. Cats. So there's a direct linear regression relationship between the size of the estate gift. You think that's a joke? This is not a joke. Teacher, F-150, lots of cats. That is the holy grail. That is the gold mine. There it is. All of your cats. I've gotten cats twice now. Little girl Benny Church School, and now teacher F-150, lots of cats. So those are the two primary ways you can raise lots of money for your favorite parents. So I wish that were more of a joke than true, but it's more true. Anyway. So next one, I'm not going to talk about this too much, the wealth transfer. Oh yeah, question. Yes. Yes. In a big way. It's a great, everybody hear that in the back? So intersecting the trends between baby boomers really wanting to create their own legacy in involving their kids in some way, maybe not giving so much to the kids, but doing something either as a family during life or sort of a legacy foundation, in particular family foundations. And she was saying that she usually tries to encourage them to certainly consider, if not as sort of a recommendation, if it's appropriate, to the community foundation as an example. We're seeing that a lot. But let's be blunt. What was the Depression era estate plan for 99.2% of them? That's not true. It's still close. What do you mean estate plan? Everything I have kids. Why are we discussing this? What do you mean there are other questions involved? I've accumulated this stuff. I want this all to go to the kids. That was the plan, right? Baby boomers, U.S. Trust study showed that inheritance to the kids is 8, like 1 less than 7th, in terms of the priority for the planning. Now it becomes the legacy planning. We just saw that with that great story about the dentist. What a great story. I mean, that's one nugget of the community foundation has 600 of those stories, each one of them are different for whatever their legacy is. The best line, I won't even tell you this, the best line I ever heard in my life was in Salina, Kansas. By the way, you'll never hear another human say that exact sentence again as long as you live. You're like, am I ever hearing that sentence again? You will never hear that sentence again. That exact sentence, never again. This is the one time in your life you heard it. You're like, what's it now? It happened today. Best line I ever heard is Salina, Kansas. State attorney stood up, he's like 6'4", black suit, looked really stuffy. He was going to speak for 10 minutes, he had like 15 note cards. I'm like, oh, great compared to this guy, but he's the best speaker I've ever heard. And he stood up, there's a legacy society there, a community foundation there in Salina. And he said, do you know what my job is as an estate attorney? It's to build up your trust enough so that you will invite me into your garden. And when I'm in your garden, I need your help picking out your favorite annuals. The second I know what your favorite annuals are, I turn those into perennials. That's what I do. I said, that is the best line I've ever heard in my entire life. And that's what they're looking for, is who is their partner to be able to take their legacy. What are their annuals? What are their passions? Which was the part of the question, of course, from the UK study. To create that legacy, to have that continued impact. We're seeing that over and over and over, in particular baby boomers. It is not everything down to kids. It's like what the appropriate amount is. Bill Warren Buffett wrote. Now they're leaving more than 2%. But also very important, there are more childless couples in this country today than there have ever been, ever. And you can easily tell them if they're childless because they're smiling all the time and they are flush with cash. Flush. What do we do with all this cash? Let's go to the trampoline park again. So 15% of those couples have a charitable estate provision. The second they have kids, that goes between 10 and 12% nationally. And if you say the G word, grandkids. Horrible. We can all agree to that. Horrible. Drops down to 5% charitable estate provisions for those that have grandkids. And I would say this too, I wasn't going to talk about any of this. I can easily turn parents against their kids. It's not that difficult. I can do it in 30 seconds. Have you looking at your phone? Give me a little timer. I can do it in 30 seconds right now. This is like advanced fundraising planning. I don't think this is a joke. I can do it. Give me my 30-second counter. Look at these kids. Get ready. Getting it all fired up here. Trampoline practice. Go. You go to one of your special events. In all 50 states, there is a law you must serve chicken. So you go to your chicken at your charitable special event. You wait for your target prospect to come up to the buffet line. You get your chicken, and it has to be a pasta, right? It's gotta be a pasta. Gotta be a little roll at the end. And you're telling them, thank you so much for coming to our event tonight and to celebrate the successes that we've had in this last year. You know, I heard your kids didn't come back over the holidays this year. I'm so sorry. I guess they have higher priorities. Boom! What's my count? 34.23%. You should be writing this down. What you do, if you're an amateur, you'll say, oh, I guess they have higher priorities. You'll take 2 steps and you'll turn amateur. you glance, like old CIA glance, you kind of just look back a little bit, and if she's like putting on the roll, she's got the butter, she kind of looks up, you're like, I got it. Easy to turn parents against their kids. Grandkids, nothing you can do. Oh, my little Johnny. Isn't your little Johnny doing 10 years in the state penitentiary for manslaughter? He was framed. No, they actually had him at the bar at 2 a.m. shooting the guy out in the parking lot and had this foot there and said, I'm John on a t-shirt, and it was all on video. Oh, that was all, the police messed all that up. And, all right, there's nothing you can do, nothing, to be able to get rid of those grandkid relationships. But anyway, I'm digressing a lot. This is all good information. You should have been writing that down. If anything, you're getting your seed anyway, you got breakfast. You got to write down how to turn kids away from the parents. So that's good stuff. So now we're talking about estate planning. So we talk about, and by the way, I'll sort of back up to your thing too. We talk about legacy gifts. We talk about permanence. We talk about the community foundation and endowment. I'm going to say something. I hope will sort of blow your mind a little bit because it blows my mind every time I say it. How long does an endowment last? I know, it's perpetuity. I love you, you have no clue what the word perpetuity means. Perpetuity means until there's no other member of our human species walking on the earth. Can you get your brain wrapped around that? So for those endowment funds at the community foundation, there's this perpetual stewardship until no one is alive on the earth anymore. And I say this too back to sort of the unrestricted side of this. When you have funds that are designated for specific purposes, there's a Methodist church in Macon, Georgia that has an $11.2 million flower fund. That's not a joke. They have $13 million of total assets. 90% of their assets are in the flower fund. And when I was there, they said, she looked like flowers. I'm like, I got it. But she left a gift through will, not bequest, gift through will, in 1958 for $51,000. And it was invested. And unfortunately, for the purposes of this story, the market's done really, really well over the last 70 years. And the $51,000 has become $11.1 million. And she had restrictions on how they spend the spending policy for that. And what's 5% spending policy on $11.1 million? It's a lot of money for flowers. And I made a bad joke. I shouldn't tell you this. I don't care. I'll never see you again. I was there, and they said, if she just would have given us beautification, we literally have leaks in our roof. And I said, like an idiot, because I'm an oblivious male, there's a from the flowers, that's not funny. And they got very upset. So, $550,000 a year in flowers. From 1958 to now, that is a speck of time in the sand on the beach. Right? And so I really encourage you as advisors to work with whatever the charitable beneficiary is or your community foundation to say, you might have certain restrictions, but at some point, the Methodist Church doesn't need $50,000 a month in flowers. Maybe we can use beautification. Maybe we can use some of these other types of purposes because we're setting this up until the end of time as we know it. Maybe there'll be some changes. We're just guessing. And that's what unrestricted, 10 minutes? Okay, I gotta move along. So that's what the unrestricted fund can do at the community foundation. Does that include my questions too? No, okay, well then I'm okay, not in 20. So that's what the unrestricted fund at the community foundation does. Or think about, if I asked you 18 months ago, what are the top 3 needs in York in this region? I would guarantee you post-COVID, or during COVID, that changed pretty rapidly. But now, if I still got to fund this, the flower fund or something else, that's not able to be nimble to be able to meet the critical needs of the community at that moment in time. Very, very powerful, those kind of funds. So I digress a little. The only thing here on wealth transfer tax is massive wealth transfer. You already know this. My joke is I'm an academic too. And so whenever you do what's called a forecast survey, this goes through 2052, you always want the end point of your survey to be longer than the life expectancy for anyone who will ever read it. Because then you can never be wrong. And then every 5 years you do longitudinal updates on all your data. So anyway, I think that's kind of fun. Next piece is gift annuities. Really won't talk about that, other than really big gift annuities that are coming in. I worked on one 90 days ago. It was $38 million on one donor for a gift annuity. Few of your people are using charitable remainder annuity trusts, because charitable remainder annuity trusts can and are, in a big way, exhausting. When they run out of money, they stop. Gift annuities continue to make that, based on the charity's chagrin, all the assets of the charity itself. And you all know financially, if you actually create any kind of fixed income instrument and you have any kind of downturn early in that sequence, that is you're never going to catch that back up unless you've got a premature death. So anyway, big CGAs, probably the community foundation. A couple things here around non-cash market. So this is my life and where I live. I've never seen in my 28 years of doing this off the chart the non-cash activity that we're seeing. I'm not talking about cash, which you knew, or publicly traded stock. I'm talking about real estate and privately held business interests, including cryptocurrency, things like that. It is unbelievable. You've got baby boomers who are also retiring and exiting either real estate or their business interests. What is their basis for real estate they've held for 30 years? Zippo. What's their basis for C Corp, S Corp, LLCs that they found in their garage 22 years ago? Zero. What would that otherwise generate? Long-term capital gains. Who are the most, huge nugget, who are the most charitably inclined people in this country? Always. Real estate wealth, private held business wealth. Always. What do real estate people own? Not a trick question. Real estate. What do private held business people own? Not a trick question. Private held business interests. What do they give? Cash. That'll drive you nuts. Huge amounts. S Corp, LLC, real estate gives, being donated to charity, like community foundations, prior to that exit. Now, giving the whole thing away, 5% undivided interest in the apartment complex, 10% interest based on the assignment for a S corporation deal. We're not going beyond the scope that you would other have issues. All these are in play. We do a ton of them. So all you need to know is the largest ones that I've ever seen are coming in right now. We do non-cash asset transactions. Our biggest year ever was last year in the middle of COVID. That doesn't make any sense. Again, people still responding to these gifts. We passed that in July. So it was that fast. We're going to double this year just with non-cash activity. Probably the same thing with your community foundation. Any of those gifts that I mentioned, public charity gets a public charity tax deduction, which means a fair market value deduction for the real estate or the C Corp stock, and no capital gains tax at the time that it's sold. So it's just like Amazon stock. Like, oh my God, that works really well. It's the same thing. You have to have appraisal issues, and there's other certainly more complex and technical issues. But from a tax perspective, what is the holy grail of charitable planning? Long-term capital gain assets that have the most appreciation. That's it. And so many of these, by design, through real estate being appreciated or privately held business interests. My joke is that everywhere in Pennsylvania, I'm sure, that the C corporation per share basis of every single C corp in this entire state is 38 cents a share. It's always 38 cents a share. So these can be really conducive for charitable giving. Huge gifts coming in this morning. Next one opportunity would be life insurance and IRA gifts. You already know about IRA gifts, but there's some interesting things because you have this 100% AGI cash deduction to anything other than a donor advised fund. But could you do that to a gift to a unrestricted fund or to an endowed field of interest fund? Yes, 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 yes. 100% AGI deduction for cash. That some are able to either sell property or take the QCD out, which you know from an IRA. But you basically have the same thing now if you're under 70 and a half as well. If I'm 60, I can take $100,000 on my IRA. That's all recognized as income. Back. Oh wait, I give it to the York County Community Foundation for my endowed fund there. I then get 100% of AGI deduction for that gift of cash. That's a backdoor QCD for everybody younger than 70 and a half of any amount. Take $1 million out if you want to, then make a cash gift. So lots of really cool things happening there. Life insurance, I won't talk about so much now because who knows what's going to happen with the estate tax. We've been seeing a ton of life insurance activity not donated to charity. But how much life insurance has been purchased in irrevocable life insurance trusts for the last 30 or 40 years for estate tax liquidity? A lot. And to the extent that so many people didn't have any estate tax so far, and we'll see where that ends up. Well, what people are doing is saying, we think it's going to come back. Do not surrender the policy. Keep the policy. But now, otherwise this was pointed income and estate tax free to pay for the estate tax that we don't have to pay right now. Why don't we take all of our tax bad assets, like our IRA, 401k, shoot that over to charities, and now just simply do a wealth replacement with all this income and estate tax free death benefit that otherwise we'll be paying to tax. We'll just shoot that over to the heirs to replace the amount that we gave away into funds that the heirs continue to advise or be active with. All that makes sense? So a lot of activity. Life insurance stays in place, but repurposed. So we see a lot of that. Donor advised funds, we won't talk about this too much. All you need to know is they're growing faster than any other vehicle off the chart. They've been growing about 30 to 35% a year. Massive payouts. So you hear all this noise of the government, oh, do 5% payout. That'd be the stupidest thing to ever do on the face of the earth, which they've done worse, obviously. So through Congress, but anyway, we'll see how that goes. So private foundations have to pay out 5%, as you know, so that's what they have to pay out. Oh no, they pay CPAs in this room to calculate what their administrative expenses are to be able to reduce the 5% down to 4.8723%, still make their qualifying distributions. Because that's what you do. For donor advised funds, you don't have to give anything out. So what do they give out? 22%. Let's go regulate that. Whatever. So the point is, 21% payout last year, I think it was 22% the year before. And this includes community foundations with endowed donor advised funds that can only pay 4 to 4.5% on their spending policy as a payout. So that's actually suppressed because that does not back out. About 10%-ish of all donor advised funds are endowed donor advised funds. Oh, that did nuts. Anyway, massive growth. Doing more bunching, which you know, sort of spiking in that year. You're going to drop down to the standard deduction. We won't need it. And then the 3-4 years, just put a big slug in again to then be able to make those grants out and optimize your tax deduction. So 2 more quick trends. One is for professionals, advisors driving the bus, maybe not so well, other than those in this room, of course. So this was a great study. This is the U.S. Trust Bank of America Merrill Lynch study. High net worth households. I love this one because they take the data in 2010 that was collected in 2009, which was the low point of the Great Recession. I love this one. They have high net worth households with $1 million net worth, excluding the primary residence, or $200,000 household income, national survey. Okay? What I like about this is they say, who are high net worth households going to discuss their charitable planning? So what's their question? Who are they seeking advice from? And you probably can't see this perfectly. I think you guys, if you haven't gotten on the slides, I'm sure you will. But this is 2006, the orange one. I'll use my pointer. 26% of the high net worth households went to their accountant to discuss their charitable giving. 16%, almost exactly, went to their attorney. 16% to their wealth advisors. In 2010, collected in 2009, the low point when it was as bad as it could get, 2009, 67% went to their accountants, 40% went to their attorney, 40% to their financial advisor. What this tells me is that when things get bad, they're coming to you to say, I see need, I want to give to that need. Please be my charitable Sherpa and help me be able to make these, because I need to make sure I'm okay. Help me make sure of that. Make sure kids are okay, however they define that. But what is the best asset to give? When should I give? How should I give? For charity. The most interesting thing about this to me is every single other category went down. They were all racing to you to say, help guide me through this process. And then this is the next slide, which Mary Kay mentioned too. This has not changed for 30 years. I used to have so much hair, I'd have to pay somebody to cut off my surplus hair like every 2 weeks. That hasn't happened. It's blown off the top of my head because of this question. Who raised the charitable question as part of the planning process? 10%. This has not moved for 30 years. 10% of the clients said, my advisor raised the question. 90% said, I have to bring it up. And every one of you, I'm being back, said, no, I include that as part of my questionnaire here at small advisor. And you do, clients forget stuff, we all know that, but I always say, you must be raising it in such an obtuse way that they never remember you raised the question. Because this has not moved for 30 years. And now I hope you have the exact question to ask based on that UK academically tested study. So you'll be able to sort of include that in there. And I would say this too, there are 3 things that make people the most anxious or uncomfortable. Number 1 is what? Since the beginning of time. Public speaking. Number 1. Number 2, contemplating your own death. Doing that on the clock in 6-minute increments makes it more fun, evidently. So $300 an hour, talking about estate plan, that's good stuff. 3, asking other people for money is the 3rd. And I was doing this docile voice with my wife a long time ago, and she sort of yelled back, said, isn't that your job description? It is. I do public speaking, say, when you pass away, leave your money to charity. So you can't hit all 3 anxiety-inducing street codes, everything like that. That's my life. So 2 more slides and we'll wrap it up. This is a big deal. This is sort of perceptions versus reality with advisors and clients. I love this study, 2014 U.S. Trust study. I love how they designed it in that. Very high net worth clients of the advisors. So they ask the clients the question and then they ask the advisors to those clients. Does that make sense? That's the way they set up that experiment. The first one, are tax benefits a motivation for charitable giving? 1, would high net worth individuals reduce their giving if income tax deductions were totally eliminated? Clients, about half said yes, we would do that. The advisors to those same clients, 78% said they would reduce it. What about estate tax eliminated? 6% of the clients said they would reduce giving. 40% of the advisors to those clients said that those clients would reduce. You're seeing, these are not like 2% deltas. These are big deltas. It gets a lot worse, by the way. Motivation for giving is reducing tax burden. 10% of the clients say that. Half of the advisors say that. Now, it could be the spark for the discussion. It could say, would you like to avoid taxes? Yes, that's a good thing. But they're still giving, not as a primary motivation. That sparks the conversation, helps them give more than otherwise they thought possible. The final slide, which you think these deltas are big, this gets crazy. The final slide is, why don't high net worth individuals give or give more? So then they ask those high net worth clients, why? Top 3 reasons, the 4th was like super low. Number 1, 30% of them said our number 1 reason, my gift will not be used wisely. Number 2, lack of knowledge or connection to the charity. Number 3, fear of increased donation requests. The big 3. Everybody got that in their heads? They then asked, I have to keep repeating this because to me it's so interesting, they asked the advisors to those clients who answered it that way. Number 1, oh, we know why. It's they would not have enough money to leave heirs. That's not in there. Oh, the second reason we know why, they would not be left with enough money for themselves. The third one is, the client does not consider himself or herself wealthy enough to give. Do you see the preconceived notions that all of us come into the planning process with? For the clients, when asked the questions, those aren't even in there. You're not talking about 2% deviation. You're talking about completely different animals in terms of motivation and goals for giving. So with that, I'll close. I don't know whether I'm maybe a minute or 2 over, if not. Do I have any time for questions? If I do, it's fine too. Okay. So I hope this has been helpful. So my big close, and I'll answer any questions too. But I hope these are sort of trends, at least as you're thinking about your clients, your practice. I'm on 1 page 3, and so hopefully you take it away at least the right question to ask, that your clients expect and encourage you to ask that. And I think your point, which is so good, the difference between sort of Depression era presumptive estate plan and where baby boomers are, and when you have this legacy gift, these endowment annuals to perennials component. And I would say, again, very respectfully, even if they weren't here sponsoring me, the community foundations are put on this earth to be lifetime and legacy stewards and solutions providers when the clients are planning something or selling something, and they want there to be some level of charitable component. And in particular right now for that non-cash asset. Estate plans are going, the estate plans that happened the last 2 years haven't happened for everybody's just going nonstop, but including through that planning process, the charitable provisions to maximize impact to endow fund and particular unrestricted funds, which are most sort of flexible. With that, any questions at all? And I can repeat your questions too, even if you have them. But yes.
So you mentioned cryptocurrency briefly, and I've heard many things about cryptocurrency, NFTs, digital assets, things like that. Is this something that's worth dedicating brain space to at this point, or is it worth that?
That is a good question. It's a complete fad or it's not, right? So I don't know. It depends. So if you're talking about this from a charities perspective, so I do a lot in that space. I'm a qualified appraiser for cryptocurrency donations. I was the only one, I think, for 5 or 6 years to spend a lot in space. It's a very shiny thing. There are the level of conversations and targeting I've never seen in my career. 35 to 40 conversations with a donor considering making a gift for every one who will actually do it. That is not an exaggeration. But many charities are creating wallets on certain platforms, whether that's an exchange like Coinbase or other platforms to receive these types of gifts. So it's very much in play. But from my experience, there are about 8 to 10 charities nationally that are doing probably 90 to 95% all crypto donations. And they tend to be sort of larger donations, all things being equal. So I don't know how best to explain that. I've written a ton on this. I wrote a number of articles in October 2014. I had my wife edit the article, which she reminds me, we're saying on Bitcoin just did 55,000. And Bitcoin at that point was $240. And she said, and she remembers, I don't remember this, she goes, I don't know what this stuff is, but should we buy some of this? Oh, that thing's going to zero, that's stupid. So that was my very good, husband response. She never brings that up weekly, by the way, so it comes up all the time. But the bottom line is, cash is the worst way to ever make charity gift. Ever. High net worth, in terms of their overall balance sheet, cash is 5 to 6%. Overall census household data shows that between 1 and 3% in cash. 92% of all gifts in this country come in the form of cash. So the least tax effective way to give, it is the personal lifestyle ones when they give it. Really what we're talking about is beyond cash. Publicly traded stock is appreciated, obviously. Privately held stock, real estate, and now crypto, and other types of assets like that that have a lot of appreciation. They're deemed property, October 2014, deemed property by the IRS. And therefore, if you did Bitcoin for $55,000 as of yesterday, and you bought it like I should have for $240 in 2014, then I get a $55,000 deduction as if it were like stock, and the charity would have no capital gains tax at the time of sale. So it's just a lot of activity that's taking place in the estate planning area there, but that also can occur with charities too. But it's very few charities are doing a fair amount, but that fair amount is about 1/100th of what people think is happening, just because there's so much noise around it. Yeah, it's a great question. And I may be finished on time, just give you the hook whatever. But any other questions? Yeah.
You talked about how the importance of language. How do you describe endowment? Is that a word we should be using, or is there another way?
That's a great question, and I'm not going to have a great answer for you. The word endowment is a very interesting cultural word. So when I was at the Atlanta Community Foundation, we would never say the word endowment, ever. Because Atlanta, average age probably early 30s, nobody, including me, I was going to stay in Atlanta. So when you went there, you had basically a non-endowed donor advised fund. Because if you did a good job or bad job, you were going to Chicago, you were going somewhere else. So the sense of permanence was sort of an aspect. Now we're going to want to, we're I'll sort of land somewhere, and they would never say that. Well, why do we want another place there permanently when I know my clients can be moving all around? Places that you will actually impact to them. And what the leads us is the first place is very powerful. And in this community, I would suggest, any other places in the Northeast, along the Syracuse community, others. Thank you all very, very much. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have a little bit too. And then, I don't know what's happening
Thank
here.
you so much, Brian. I'm Liz Dellinger. I'm the Director of Treasury Management for Children's Bank, and I also have the honor of serving as the Secretary for the New York County Community Foundation.
They love the
Chair of the Regional Development Committee, so someone who works in finance and has volunteered for many nonprofit boards, being in the development committees. Brian, your remarks were spot on. If everybody wrote down that question, I know I did. Many of our clients like to leave money to charity, whether any
got a little bit more
There's
question
the
here.
opportunity to let you know what they are interested
And they
in.
say now every third word.
Please remember that your county
Sort of
community
ag-based farmer, that permanent sense of place.
so many flexible solutions. I know I'm relatively new to the foundation, and I'm learning from Mary Kay and Phil every day, all the different things we can do to help your clients reach their charitable goals. And what a great legacy that they can leave by having their philanthropic dollars stay here in our community, a community that you love and they love as well. Please reach out to our dedicated staff. You met Mary Kay up here at the podium. Phil, I think you're in the back. Phil Woods is in the back. They're willing to meet with you, help you, provide any kind of resources you may need. Before you leave, remember, if you haven't already, to sign up for your credits here with Edie, and I think you all have a packet of information. There's also some materials on the table here where you signed in. Please feel free to take those home. I understand we will be getting the slides out to you and to the people that weren't able to attend. So feel free to share those with others in your offices, colleagues that couldn't be here. Brian, I think there's a lot of information in there that, kind of wow moments for people, so thank you. We are going to take a quick 15-minute break. We still have Brian here for another hour, so for those of you that would like to stay, especially those representing our nonprofit communities, but professional advisors as well. I know a lot of you, probably almost all of you, serve on a nonprofit board already, and the next session on plan giving on a shoestring budget is really going to resonate, and I think there'll be a lot of tips you can take back to your board. So please feel free to get up, get some more coffee, stretch, and we will reconvene shortly.